Good night, failure. Good morning, grace. Have you found that in life sometimes you have to go back to move forward? Any rugby fans here? When I was in America, living in LA, I was trying to explain to a bunch of these new friends of ours on the beach that were playing American football, and I started just passing the ball in the way that I know, the proper way to throw the ball. And we started having a conversation about how rugby works, and they said, this makes no sense. And I was explaining it to them. I was trying my best to explain it to them. Didn't get very far with it. But rugby is the better sport, I have to say. One thing I would say, though, is that for American footballers, they do like to hit each other, even if they haven't got the ball. So that makes it more exciting if you naturally like physicality. Sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward. About a week after breaking my ankle, they thought I'd also ruptured my Achilles. And so when they were doing the ultrasound on my Achilles, they actually found that I had a blood clot. And when I had the blood clot, deep vein thrombosis, they said, well, you still got the broken ankle, you've got the blood clot, we need to take the boot off for a bit. And so I was thinking to myself, okay, the boot's off, and I started living my life, although albeit on crutches, without the boot. This was 8 weeks ago. The week later, I went back in to see the orthopedic surgeon and said, why on earth are you out the boot? I said, one of your colleagues, I'm sure a lovely person, told me to get out of the boot. And so I've been put back in the boot. And he said, sometimes you have to go back in order to move forward. We're going to read a passage from John 21 where we see Jesus doing this with a disciple we all know quite well. If you were here last week, you'll have seen this disciple trying their best in the Traitors, the Easter Sunday. This is about Peter. Peter, who had failed dramatically. He disowned Jesus 3 times, even having been told that that's what he was going to do. And there's this incredible moment in this narrative off the back of the resurrection and Jesus appearing to disciples. He's just seen Thomas, doubting Thomas, actually faithful Thomas, if you read about Thomas in other parts of the Bible. And after he's seen the disciples go back fishing. Peter says, I'm going to go fishing. And so he goes fishing, and it's easy, isn't it, sometimes to go back to what we once knew when everything seems lost. And Peter had kind of lost his sense of identity and his security, and he'd lost his way. And they're fishing, and out of nowhere, Jesus turns up and says to them, friends, have you caught any fish? Knowing the answer is no. And he says to the disciples, he says, throw your net on the other side. The disciples, you can imagine, they're thinking, we've heard this before. I've heard this kind of communication before. And as this is happening, John, the one who Jesus loved the most, apparently, according to John, said, look, it's the Lord. And Peter, the same Peter that would chop off ears of the soldiers trying to arrest Jesus, the same Peter that would step onto the water and walk on water with Jesus, the same Peter that would hear some of the most incredible teaching firsthand, the same Peter that would be there for the miracles, the same Peter that would later go on to see extraordinary things happen. Many, many people come to faith. He jumps into the water. And he begins swimming to shore because he wants to be with Jesus. He has a chance to get things right. It says this from verse 9 of John 21. When they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire in place with fish laid on it and bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you have just caught. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. Now none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the 3rd time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. I tell you the truth, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. I love this. Don't you love this scene? If you like cooked breakfast, the idea of cooked breakfast on the beach sounds really exciting. When they get to the shore, they see a fire laid with fish. Jesus has prepared breakfast, which I think is encouraging for us, because I think maybe there may well be cooked breakfast in heaven, but don't quote me on that. Jesus said to them, though, come and have breakfast. Jesus provides this miracle, and yet he still invites the disciples to participate. Did you notice that? He already has the fish cooking, but he says, come, bring the fish with you. And that's the heart of the Father, isn't it? He doesn't need us, but he wants us. He doesn't need us, but he loves us to play our part and to get involved. He shows Peter where the fish are in the first place. He goes, throw it on the other side. He enables the catch, and then he invites them to bring something along to the party, to the table. Because grace includes us. We're not left out. And we don't know what kind of fish, we can probably speculate, but we do know what kind of fire. It's a fire of burning coals, a charcoal fire. And that's significant because there's only one other reference to a fire of burning coals in the whole of the Bible. It's John 18, verse 18, where Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And this is significant because Jesus knew the only way to get Peter free from the shame of that denial, of that pain, of that sense of regret from the past, as he had to recreate a scene for him to move forward. He had to take Peter back to his moment of deepest regret and shame and pain in order to move him forward in the destiny he had for him, in the calling he had for him. So he recreates this scene. Same smell, same type of atmosphere, same type of fire, but a very different ending. And you may well kind of already know this about smell, but it's very powerful, isn't it? You know, that freshly cut grass, you find yourself suddenly back at school just as the cricket season's starting, maybe. Or a certain meal and you're back home. Or an aftershave and you're suddenly 17 again, or thinking, gosh, that was a big mistake. Smell doesn't just remind you, it replays things. You know, if you've ever sat by a fire and had a lovely evening with friends, chatting, you don't notice it at first, but the smell begins to catch and begins to cling to you. And sometimes what you'll find is you'll put that jumper away and you'll hang it up, and then you'll wear another jumper that was close to that jumper, and you'll smell it and think, gosh, what's wrong with this jumper? It's caught from that experience. It clings to us, it lingers. And the same is true for shame. It lingers, it sticks around. But what Jesus does is he gets rid of that smell of shame. He actually recreates that whole sense for Peter so that when he smells charcoal fire in the future, he'll have a whole new understanding of it. Jesus is saying, I'm changing what that smell means for you, Peter. And the same's true for some of us. Maybe you've got a charcoal fire moment in your life, a place, a memory, a decision. And every time you think about it, it still smells like shame. It still feels uncomfortable. But I really sense that as we go into this next season as a church, Jesus isn't asking us to avoid that place in our lives, but instead to walk straight into it. He comes straight into that space to meet us. Not to expose you, but to heal you. Not to remind you who you were, but to show you who you are now, how far you've come, and that you no longer need to live with that pain and that regret. He doesn't avoid our worst moments for us. He redeems it. He's in the business of redeeming. And so Jesus takes Peter back to that place of his failure, not to rub it in, but to set him free, to rewrite it. That's the whole context for what's going on here. Because grace frees us from our past. This is what's beautiful. The smell that once represented that failure from now on, after this moment, will forever be the smell of forgiveness. The smell of your shame, Peter, the smell of your biggest mistake, the smell where you denied me, a little girl, you denied me to a little girl that you even knew me, yet you had seen all of these things. You walked on water, Peter. You did all of these things, Peter. All of these things going on in Peter's mind. That sense of disappointment, betrayal. Now that smell will be the smell of freedom. The smell of forgiveness, the smell of healing. He's a redeeming Father. He's the redeeming Father. And so he's saying, Peter, breathe in this charcoal fire. I want you to breathe it in, knowing my freedom and grace. That failure will be now forever replaced with a different F, freedom. I found that Jesus will often revisit what we want to avoid, because actually that's where freedom lives. Yet we walk around chained, uncomfortable. Maybe that's what Jesus wants to do for some of you today, to redeem your memory, redeem something you're ashamed of from your past. He's in the business of bringing freedom. He's saying to many of us today, I believe, as we go into this kind of summer term. It's not quite summer yet, but we're beginning to see the glimpses, right? The sun helps. He's saying, good night, failure, good morning, grace. So that's the first thing grace does. Brings freedom from the past. But what's interesting is if you look in a different gospel, in Luke, the same scenario, there's a really interesting phrase that's really stuck with me this week. It's where it says, Peter followed at a distance. This is when Jesus was arrested. Peter followed at a distance. Luke 22, verse 56, it says that. Peter followed at a distance. And I think this is where the problem begins for Peter. It's not denial, it's distance. It starts with distance. I don't think anyone really wakes up one morning and goes, I'm going to wreck my life today. I'm just going to start offending people, start being unfaithful, start making big mistakes, start making bad decisions. It doesn't happen in a moment. It happens slowly. And I've been thinking back over my life, those moments that have kind of preceded my greatest regrets have often been those moments where I've been less connected to church, reading my Bible less, praying less. That moment where I was kind of at university and really living a double life was a moment where my relationship with God was non-existent. There's a difference between being close and being connected. John 15 encourages us to abide in him, to abide in the vine. And actually to do that with others as well. I think one of the greatest tactics of the enemy is to get us to be isolated. That's why I say, life is pretty tough. That's for those of us that already have communities and people that we're doing life with, groups, or for me, guys that I'm doing life with outside of this church, other vicars, and then outside of that, other young leaders that I'm kind of praying with, and life is still tough. Let me encourage you, if you're doing life on your own, please begin to think about finding another group of people to do life with. Sundays is not just going to be enough. It's a great place to start, but we need belonging. We need community. Because what happens is when we start following at a distance, we stop abiding, we disconnect, we isolate ourselves, and then we begin believing our doubts and doubting our beliefs because we haven't got others around us encouraging us in the faith, supporting us, loving us. And this is why I think shame is so dangerous, because shame doesn't just make you feel bad. It begins to make you hide. It begins to make you retreat. It begins to make you think, gosh, I've gone too far. There's nowhere back for me. But let me say this to you. Because of what Jesus has done on the cross, you are never too far gone. It is never too much. There is always grace. Not because sin doesn't matter, not because failure is small, but because ultimately he has paid the price. He has bled for our sins. And so his grace calls us closer. No matter how many times you've said, I'll never do that again, and then it's Monday morning and it's happened again. His grace calls us closer again this morning. And then that love reshapes our identity. Did you notice what he called Peter? He says in verse 15, Simon, son of John. This isn't like a nickname. This is his original name. This is his fisherman name. This is the name that Jesus had already, when he met him, this was the name that Simon already had before Jesus called him Peter. Peter that would become the rock. And this is the point. Identity does not start with what we do for God. It starts with who we are for him. Simon was one of the most common names in Palestine, along with John. It was also in the top 5. This was him saying, you're not unique because you're extraordinary. Peter, you're unique because I've called you. You're unique because I've called you. Peter's confidence was in being special. Now Jesus strips that away and brings him back to something deeper. There was a moment for me in a season of training to be a vicar where, for whatever reason, I went from leading and hosting and speaking to suddenly being at the back on security, which is a pretty good job as well. I'm quite good at that. But don't get any ideas. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing here until God says otherwise. But I went from hosting services to suddenly kind of helping at the back and doing security. And do you know what I learned in that time? I had to understand again, it was just as important who I was in Christ at the back as it was as who I was up here. I say sometimes to people, if you want to be prepared to use a mic, be prepared to use the mop. And once you're using the mic, you get used to using a mop, stacking chairs. That's what leading a church looks like. It's not about what we're doing, it's about who we are. And that's what Jesus is trying to do in this moment. So he says, Simon, son of John. And he asks them the question, do you love me more than these? Jesus is giving Simon Peter a chance to set the record straight. He doesn't ask, hey, Peter, now I've created this scene for you. Have you learned your lesson? Do you understand what's going on here? From now on, will you promise to behave? He asks him a really simple question. He says, do you love me? Do you love me? It's a question for us to think about. Not, are you impressive? Not, will you lead the early church with style and charisma? Do you love me? It's not interrogation, it's invitation. And this moment between Jesus and Peter is beautiful, especially if you understand the Greek, because Jesus is asking initially, do you love me? Do you agape me? Do you love me with that deep, self-sacrificial love? And Peter responds with a different type of love. He uses the word phileo. Lord, you know that I phileo you, which is a love like a friend. So it's not sacrificial love, it's love like a friend. And so Jesus asks again for agape love. Again, Peter answers with phileo love. And then the third time, Jesus comes down to Peter's level, and this gives me so much hope and encouragement. He says, Peter, do you phileo me? Peter can't bring himself to claim more than he has in that moment. It's as if he's saying, Lord, I want to love you like that, but because of what's happened, this is all I've got right now. This is what I recognize is my offering. And what's incredible is Jesus takes it. He meets him right there, not where he should be, but where he actually is. This is the truth with Jesus. Jesus meets us where we are. Come as you are. Bring what you can bring. Jesus takes Peter's small, fragile love and breathes grace on it. Because the truth is, Jesus isn't after perfection. He's after affection. And that's good news for us all, right? Because there are moments where it's like, I'm really struggling to serve in that way. Lord, you've asked me to do something that feels really hard. This is what I can offer. Or I haven't been to church now for 6 months. I just need to turn up again and just be here. He'll take that. He can work with that. The truth is, though, he'll say, come as you are, but you won't stay the same. This is what we see with Peter. Ultimately, Peter, as he's told, will go and be crucified. But so is his understanding of grace and his understanding of glorifying God, his understanding that he can't even be crucified in the same way as Jesus. History books will tell us that he was crucified upside down. He understood agape love. But Jesus met him where he was at the beach. And did you notice that all of this happens with others around them? They're all there together. It's like the Last Supper's been recreated. Hey, Peter, you're going to disown me 3 times before the rooster crows. So I'm going to ask you 3 times, do you love me? So there's others around there, and that matters because restoration happens around other people. Restoration needs to happen around other people as well. This is about actually Jesus saying to Peter in front of his disciples, hey guys, I still believe in Peter. I still believe in Peter. He is going to be the rock in which this church is going to be built. He's affirming him again. And then he says those familiar words that they've heard just 3 years before, follow me. Peter left everything to follow Jesus, not knowing the miracles he would one day see, the failures he'd face, or the calling ahead. And now after denial, shame, after going back to fishing, his old profession, because that's what he knew to do. The same call again, follow me. Because grace doesn't just forgive, it recommissions. Peter is reinstated. And Jesus ultimately restores his purpose, feed my sheep. Grace frees you from the past. Peter's failure doesn't define him, and neither does yours. Grace restores purpose in the present. Today, for us. For Peter, Jesus gave him something to do. Failure may well disqualify us in our minds, but not in his. And here's the truth, grace rewrites the future. Jesus had told Peter that when the rooster cried, he would have already denied him 3 times. Just think about this for a moment. From when that happened, to a week later, breakfast on the beach. Do you think Peter might have heard a rooster cry? Do you think he might have been woken up? He might have been jarred when he heard that noise. From this moment on, that smell of the burning coals and the cry of the rooster will give a whole understanding for grace for Peter. It says, doesn't it, that his grace is new every single morning. For Peter, he may well have heard a rooster most mornings for the rest of his life as a reminder of the grace and the reinstating that he received through Jesus. We're going to read over the next few weeks. We're going to go into the book of Acts as a church, as I mentioned, and we're going to hear stories of Peter's boldness, his strength, his courage. That on the day of Pentecost, he preached a message where over 3,000 people came to faith and were baptized that day. How can someone go from denying Jesus, going back to their old profession, full of shame, full of regret, gone back to what he knew, to suddenly, a month later, full of the Spirit, preaching a message that would see the Church of Christ born? It's grace. I don't know where you're at today, but I know it looks different to where you might be in a month's time if you allow Jesus to move in your life. If you offer your life again this morning, when you're asked the question, do you love me? You come honestly, you come securely, recognizing what he has for you. for the future. Love for Jesus does three things. It brings freedom. He heals shame and he rewrites our failure. It reshapes our identity. Who we are flows from his voice, not our performance and not what others say. And he redirects our purpose. He restores calling and gives something for us to do. Today, maybe this is your moment to choose to stop following at a distance. And I think I might be speaking to someone online who's watching this down the line right now. Maybe this is your moment to come back into the loving arms of the Father that simply asks you, do you love me? Because what he has for you is far more than you can begin to ask or imagine. You are not your failure. You are not the shame. He has a plan for you, and there is grace today. Maybe this is our moment to remember again. We can say good night to failure and good morning to grace. A song's going to come on now.
Standing out there on the lake shoreline, the one that I love but denied 3 times. Warming my hands by the charcoal fire, you asked, do I love you? I felt ashamed just to talk to you, look you in the eye like I used to do. But grace in the question that pierced right through. You asked, do I love you? And oh, it blows my mind that you'd even want my love, that you'd even want my love. Jesus raised on high, I give you all my love, I give you all my love. Save me a space by your wounded side. Show me your scars in the morning light. Speak of your mercy I can't describe. You ask, do I love you? And oh, how I love you. Oh, how I love you. And oh, how I love you. You know that I love you. And oh, it blows my mind that don't. How I love